what was, to not disrupt the potential of new relationships and opportunities. For some, there will be discomfort. For others, a sense of rightness and alignment. Help us to trust in the discernment of your will for this time. Your love assures us through the unknown. At this threshold, remind us of all those things that have stirred within us as precious gifts and blessings granted to those who have sought holy ground with you and each other. May we continue to become people of the temple, unified in purpose and mission, and connected and grounded in love. God of the everlasting journey, we affirm that you are our shadow by day and our pillar by night, our King, our companion, our all. Help us recognize the abundant gifts that enable us to share as freely and generously as our ancestors did so long ago. Give us eyes and ears attuned and aware of where the Spirit leads. We pray for an endowment of the Holy Spirit to companion us as we move into the days ahead. May we become those who live the peace of Jesus Christ in all its personal, interpersonal, community, and global dimensions for the sake of your world. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. So we'll watch the first video.
We extend our warmest greetings to each of you in the peace of the living Christ. Today, church leaders shared a major announcement through various communication releases. On March 5th, Community of Christ officially transferred ownership of the Kirtland Temple, the Joseph Smith Historic Site in Nauvoo, and various manuscripts and artifacts to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for an agreed-upon amount. The details can be found at the church's website at seaofchrist.org.
In sharing this news, the First Presidency and World Church Leadership Council want to convey the depth of thought and prayer that went into this decision. We experienced a broad range of emotions through this journey, and I agonized over the impact that selling these historic sites would have on members and friends who deeply valued the church's ownership. On occasion, I wept tears of concern for the disappointment and grief some would experience. At the same time, I felt rising hope for the future that the proceeds would make possible. I think it is important to emphasize that the church remains committed to the exploration and telling of all of our sacred story. Doctrine and Covenants 162, paragraph 2a, reminds us to continue to listen to the stories of our past because they will teach and prepare us for moving forward as a faith community.
The World Church Leadership Council arrived at this decision through spirited discussion, prayer, and discernment over multiple years. Leaders came to understand that letting go of these physical assets, as painful as it was, would generate financial resources to invest in our current and future mission. As a group, we also recognized that continuing to honor and learn from our history was not dependent on ownership. The sale agreement includes the commitment to keep the sites publicly accessible to all. Through this process, leaders deepened our passion for stewarding our sacred story as a foundation for the story yet to be written.
I found solace in seeing this decision as an investment in our future, providing capacity to grow our response to Christ's mission of seeking justice, pursuing peace, and creating sacred communities that reflect God's vision of shalom for the world. The sale proceeds, totaling $192.5 million US, will significantly strengthen our endowments to help support current and future mission in new and expanding ways that are still being determined. This opportunity was made possible through the generosity and faithful service of those who have gone before us. In this moment, we give thanks for the generations of members, friends, volunteers, and servant leaders who dedicated their time and passions to preserving the historic sites and sharing the story of the church for well over a century. The presiding bishopric has provided written and video information about the investment, management, and use of these funds. They also explain how supporting worldwide mission ties and increasing other income sources are essential to sustaining and growing our global mission.
This decision to sell goes beyond a mere business transaction. It represents a challenging, long-term commitment to help secure our current and future mission. Initially, when we explored possibilities, I was convinced there had to be a way to fortify the church financially without resorting to this sale. The idea of selling these cherished physical assets seemed unimaginable. As we discerned about the future, it became increasingly clear that parting with these precious sites and items was the best way to embrace the opportunities to serve God through serving others. The realization dawned that we were choosing people over property and paper. This became a guiding principle that bolstered us when the prospect of proceeding with the sale felt unbearable. Even as we mourned the loss, the potential opportunities of the future fueled our hope. Completing this sale emerged as a crucial step in strengthening our response to wherever the Spirit leads us.
Church history knows no boundaries and is not restricted to any one place or structure. We must continue to lift up the lessons of the past and the people who have given us a strong foundation as we forge ahead. We are called to faithfully follow the Holy Spirit into the future and make history as we pursue our mission to effectively proclaim Jesus Christ and promote communities of joy, hope, love, and peace throughout the world. We have been praying for our worldwide church family, and we will continue to hold you in our prayers as we journey together.
As we move through whatever thoughts or emotions we experience in the days to come, we trust that the Holy Spirit will stir our prophetic imagination, helping us lean into the future. Doctrine and Covenants, section 164, paragraphs 9E and F, provides a guide for us. The challenges and opportunities are momentous. Will you remain hesitant in the shadows of your fears, insecurities, and competing loyalties? Or will you move forward in the light of your divinely instilled call and vision? The mission of Jesus Christ is what matters most for the journey ahead.
As we move into this next chapter in our journey, we look forward to the hospitality and mission that will be experienced through Community of Christ historic sites in Independence, Lamoni, and Plano, as well as places around the world of shared heritage where we gather as a faith community. Our church history principles remind us that God's Spirit equips us with tools, insights, and experiences for divine purposes. A shared memory of our past and an informed understanding of its meaning prepare us to courageously move into the future. As President Veazey stated last year at World Conference, Community of Christ has a hopeful future of continuing adventure with God, if we choose it. But make no mistake, choosing the future God envisions will require discernment, courage, sacrifice, generosity, flexibility, and creativity. As you navigate your own feelings and thoughts, I invite you to explore the other testimonies and resources available on the church's website. May we move onward together, guided by the light of our divinely instilled call and vision, with the mission of Jesus Christ as our compass.
There we go. I would invite your questions and comments based on what you heard in that video, or if there's anything you've experienced this week that you haven't heard addressed. Just remember that we will get into the other videos, and that may answer any questions that we have, and if so, I'll refer that up to the video. We also invite anybody watching from home to text to Joe or Kim, and then they will grab a mic and share that with us so that we can hear your concerns and questions. All right, so we got Fred back here first.
I would have to admit that when I heard about particularly the Kirtland Temple, that I was shocked, because I believed that never would happen. And yet, as I contemplated that and thought about it, I was reminded of the years of experience that I've had of our congregations providing a budget that is sometimes 70 and 80% coverage of our building, and 20% maybe for programs and for outreach. And along with that, if the money was short, it was the outreach that suffered, not the building. And so as I remembered that, I remembered also that changes happen in our lives that we don't anticipate. But my experience has been that God is leading us, and that He will provide for us to be flexible enough to move forward.
Thank you, Fred. Okay.
The question is,
Go ahead. You need the mic because they won't hear it otherwise.
The question is, do we know the actual date of transfer, and have they taken possession yet? And I'm going to answer this. They took possession on March 5th, the day it was announced, and they are officially in charge of all the properties. I was at the temple on Thursday, and the artifacts have already been moved into their possession.
And the other date is it's open. The sites will be open again to the public under their new leadership on the 25th of March. Sam.
When I was a boy, we went to the Kirtland Temple for the Kirtland reunion. And my thoughts are right now are this. Economically, that sale had to go through. There was no alternative choice. The second thing that comes to my mind when I looked at the picture of the Kirtland Temple, and I'm just talking about the structure, it's an old building. It's not what I would call an ergonomic building. I mean, because of heating and cooling, maintenance and so forth. So I feel that it was a wise decision.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes. Yeah, we need a mic because the people at home watching from home won't hear.
I heard the words Nauvoo and Plano, Illinois. Are those other properties they're considering?
So Plano remains in Community of Christ. All the sites at Nauvoo, other than Lamoni. So I'm not sure I understand your question then. Yes, and Independence. The sites here are still Community of Christ. Those sites are post-reorganization, so they have no relationship to the LDS Church. Jacob?
Kim, I had a question. Is all the artifacts being sent to us, or is it just half of it? Because they had a lot of artifacts in Nauvoo when I was little with my Sunday school class, and I didn't know if all the artifacts are going to be taken or just half of that to give to us from Nauvoo. So you know why I'm asking on that.
It was specific artifacts that were located in the Temple Museum, to my knowledge, such as the portrait of Joseph and Emma, and there was a couple of other things that were done. The original copy of the Book of Mormon had already been sold about 3 years ago. So the artifacts that they had taken were from the Temple Museum, and things have already been put in their place until they revamped the museum.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to the presiding bishopric video.
On behalf of the presiding bishopric, I extend greetings to each of you in the peace of Jesus Christ. As news of the sale of historic properties, manuscripts, and artifacts to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is being shared with the church, we reflect on these words from Doctrine and Covenants 161:7. The path will not always be easy, but the cause is sure. From its earliest beginnings, our faith movement has sought to live God's guidance by responding with our whole lives. As you will hear from others over the next days and weeks, the decision to sell historic assets was not an easy one. It was a decision filled with emotion, but one that ultimately reflected a willingness to respond with our whole lives to a hopeful vision for our future, a cause that is sure amid the disruption of letting go.
Discernment of God's continuing call to pursue Christ's peace in all its dimensions created a compelling case for decisive action that would make a significant difference in the church's ability to respond to this call. Although selling these physical assets causes a variety of emotions, the sale generates financial resources to invest in our present and in our future. The sales proceeds, totaling $192.5 million, will significantly strengthen our endowments and help support mission in new and expanding ways.
With the sale now complete, the presiding bishopric is working through the detailed planning of how the sale proceeds will be invested and used to help support the church's mission. We can share that most of the proceeds will be used to increase the capacity of the temple and worldwide mission endowments as one source of annual income. Worldwide mission tithes and other sources of income are still critical to maintaining the current level of ministries and services. The investment is made possible due to the Church's response as we close out the Bridge of Hope retirement responsibility and turn our focus towards the future.
Growing the endowments is an important financial strategy as we look to the future. One of the consistent themes the presiding bishopric has shared in recent financial updates is the growing gap between income and expenses. In nations where participation in church life has been declining, there has been a gradual aging of active membership and a drop in contributors for over 4 decades. The trajectory of decreasing worldwide mission ties and increasing expenses meant that in 2025, we were looking at drastic reductions in ministries and services, including the possibility of losing a third of our current employees.
The projected reduction would have eliminated major services and ministries that support the global mission of the church. Like other church denominations and service organizations, Community of Christ is exploring creative ways to convey and live our message and mission in rapidly changing contexts. Although leaders across the church have been discerning and responding to changing ministry contexts, change takes time. Also, some cultural trends impacting church participation are beyond our control. These factors led to the sale of historic assets as the only remaining assets that could sufficiently fund endowments, and in part, generate the needed income over time to change our trajectory in some parts of the world.
By directing a significant portion of the sale proceeds to the temple and worldwide mission endowments, recurring income can be added to the budget beginning in 2025 to continue current levels of support for ministries, services, and employees across the global church and the operations, witness, and ministries of the temple. We are grateful for the dedication of generations past that has made possible this financial resource for generations to come.
As church leaders continue to discern and implement missional strategies, expanding the church's ministries around the world, growing our endowments, increasing contributors, and identifying other sources of income are key financial strategies. The sale proceeds of $192.5 million is substantial, but it does not fully address our funding needs. Engaging generous disciples who are passionate about the church's global mission and impact is critical to our future funding strategy. Mission ties help fund vital ministries now and in the future as the church responds to diverse global ministry contexts by innovating with new forms of ministry, responding to growth opportunities, and bringing all the dimensions of Christ's peace into the lives of individuals and communities.
Proceeds from the sale will not cover the projected decline in contributors to worldwide mission tithes. However, it will help replace projected income loss in the next 4 to 5 years, giving leaders time to develop and implement strategies that will bring additional income to support our mission. The sale proceeds will also help sustain the operations, witness, and ministries of the temple for future generations by increasing the annual income available from the temple endowment.
For a more thorough explanation about how the sale of historic assets will support the Church's mission, please read the Presiding Bishopric Financial Report available on the Church's website. We hope you will take the time to review it. As planning continues and more details become available, we will share information in future financial updates.
God calls beyond the limits of our imagination. The Spirit's persistent invitation to follow Jesus, the peaceful one, compels us as disciples to make challenging decisions about how to best use our assets to pursue what matters most.
As we're reminded in Doctrine and Covenants 163:11a, God is calling for a prophetic community to emerge, characterized by uncommon devotion to the compassion and peace of God revealed in Jesus Christ.
Through divine grace and wisdom, this faith community has been given abundant gifts, resources, and opportunities to equip it to become such a people. The Presiding Bishopric remains committed to the cause of pursuing God's vision of shalom and writing the next lines of our sacred story.
Any comments related to what you saw in this video? Any questions, concerns, stories? Yes.
Are we on? Yep.
To me, this is the frightening piece because I'm sad. I grew up with Terry and many of the people, the Christiansons, some of them. I went to retreats in the Nauvoo house when I was a teenager. That just makes me sad. I can get past that, but it's sad that other young people won't have that opportunity. What I think is frightening is how we move into the future, and just as Carla said, this money will get us through the next 4 or 5 years, but that's not a long time. And I think as we are stewards, and I know that we each have our own responsibility and outlook, but to me, that's the frightening piece.
Okay. Lou, right behind you.
I hope this is taken in the spirit, which I think. Say you have a will, person A says they have a will/trust. And in that trust, they say, I want to give $10 to the upkeep of Kirtland Temple. That's in their will. Down the line, that person dies. The will comes before the court. What happens to that $10 now that Kirtland is not ours?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll refer that to the questions that I'll send in. Does anybody else know that? Anybody else know? I'm assuming that we'd have to do some quick updates if that's the case under your estate plan. So, and you don't wish it to go there anymore. So. Back here, Vic.
Is the LDS going to take us completely over one of these days?
I think we've got some stubborn answers to that one. Yes.
Just from experience around Nauvoo, when this came out, I happened to be at home in Keokuk, and the next morning we drove up to Nauvoo just to, like I said, revisit old friends. I have no doubt that the Mormons will take very good care of those properties. That they have taken Nauvoo by storm over the last 40 years, and it's very, very well done. So it will be in good hands, which that reassures me that it will at least not fall in disrepair and that, but it's just, it's heartbreaking. Like we took all of our eggs in one basket and now they're gone.
It's been a while since I was at Nauvoo, but I was at Kirtland 2017 when I presented a paper at the history conference, the Historical Society conference that was there. It reminded me of my days when we lived in Pittsburgh and we visited Kirtland quite often. So another thing that they made sure to point out, and I don't know if it's in this or if it's something I saw posted, but that it's the mission, it's the history arm of the LDS that's taking over control and management rather than the missionary arm. So that was one thing that was pointed out. Anyone else? Jacob. Okay, that is a concern that we all have, that the story won't be the same as we share that. So we have to, Joe.
Just a little bit of clarification on what Jacob was saying. Because this sale is being handled by the historic arm of the LDS Church and not the missionary, if we decide to go visit Kirtland and take the tour will continue to be much like it was when we had our historians taking the tour. If it had gone through the missionary arm, it would have been a lot different story that we were hearing. So that's good news for us because it's on the historic side, and that story will remain a history instead of a doctrine of what they want us to hear.
Okay, can you pass it to Sandy, please? Oh, thank you. Anyone else? All right, the next, Jeff. Getting in the way.
Yeah, the infographics really speak for themselves. If you take a look at them, and especially the one that they flashed up where the gap continued to get wider and wider as time goes on. And so I think that, I'm in favor of what they did. I think it takes a lot of disciplined stewardship to pull that kind of decision to the table and to be planning for our future instead of clinging to a past. Because for our church, the reorganization started with Joseph Smith III. That's when our church started, in my opinion, renamed, reorganized at that particular point in time. I think that church history, for that particular era of church history, is much more important to the LDS faith than it is to our faith. And that's why the sentimental value of those properties far exceed with what they wanted to pay for it than what anybody else would be willing to pay for it. And so I think they'll be in great hands, and they'll be well maintained, and they'll be available for anyone to visit. And I see it to be a winning situation for us, really.
Another important point that they mentioned was that Community of Christ maintains 6 times a year when they can have exclusive retreats or events at the Kirtland Temple. So there won't be LDS leadership during those times. And it's apparently the reciprocal. They had the same opportunity when we were in charge of it. So they had opportunities to have exclusive access to that. So let's move now to Locke Mackay's video. He's the former director of the Kirtland Temple and other historic sites.
Today, I'm going to make an exception. My grandmother was Lois Smith Larson, a daughter of President Frederick Madison Smith and granddaughter of Joseph Smith III. I grew up attending Smith family reunions in Nauvoo and Independence, but it wasn't until after university that I fell in love with our story. Following several summer internships, I ended up as director of the Kirtland Temple Historic Site and spent 15 years living literally in the shadow of Kirtland Temple. I moved to Nauvoo in 2007 and have lived on the Joseph Smith Historic Site for 18 years. These places have been my home for almost my entire adult life. I met my wife Kristen in the red brick store in Nauvoo and was ordained to my first and favorite priesthood office, teacher, in Kirtland Temple. I've almost certainly given more tours of Kirtland Temple than any living person. And the Nauvoo House, Homestead, and Mansion House are my ancestral homes. For me, the decision to part with these places has been devastating emotionally. There was a time when I thought it might break me, but if I inherited anything from Joseph Smith III, it's his pragmatism. And intellectually, the path forward is clear. I care deeply about our past, but I care even more about our future. The post-pandemic world has changed. The needs have never been greater, and we no longer have the resources, human or financial, to care for these places the way they deserve to be cared for. The Smith family, like larger church family in the 1830s and 40s, suffered extraordinary losses in Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois, but they faithfully persevered. The most important items in this transaction came to the church from the family. So the proceeds from the sale, at some level, are an extraordinarily generous gift from them that will sustain us as we move into the future. I think they would feel good about that. Amid my grief, so do I.
Sharon.
This hopefully will echo a little bit about what Locke just shared very personally. Cal and I had the opportunity Friday night, just this past Friday night, to visit with Scott Orth in our home. And the Orth family gave the land that Nauvoo sits on today. It belonged to them. They're still big supporters and members of the church. Scott shared story after story after story that happened at Nauvoo about his family. And many of the stories dealt completely about moving forward, horrible situations that had happened to the church that we persevered through. He also shared that when Joseph and Hiram's bones were found, it was Scott's family that was there among other church members helping to very respectfully and reverently move those bones to their final resting place. He mentioned the same thing about Emma and his family, helping her move to her final resting place. And so it made me think of the whole situation in a different way, that even though my 2 or 3 times at Nauvoo may seem like a horrible or a very sad event to reflect on, people like Lachlan, people like the Orth family, whose land is still there, have got to have more heartache in this than we think, but they're still willing, like Locke, to say there's got to be a bigger picture, like Joseph Smith III had to have said many, many times. There's got to be a bigger picture. We've got to keep moving forward and doing things that are really hard and are going to hurt for a while. But there's got to be a path through, and the path through for us as Community of Christ, to me, has always seemed to push beyond those things, and hopefully it's going to end in a way that, or continue in a way that's positive for the next generations, not just for mine.
Okay, thank you. What a gift that must have been. Anyone else want to share a perspective, concern? No? What do I think? My first immediate thing was, oh my gosh, we really had to do this. Why did we have to do this? And then my next thought was, how do I get the congregation through this? And so I started thinking, okay, we got to cancel Sunday school and do this. And I was so glad to see all the cars in the parking lot this morning. I really appreciate you coming out and supporting and looking perhaps for answers, trying to help together rather than little backside conversations about what's going on in the church. I really dislike that. I don't like the backstabbing or the little conversations that only have part of the context. We don't hear the whole context of everything that's happening if we don't share in community together. And so that was my biggest concern, was how to hear all the stories, all the concerns, all the questions, get those out in the open and answer them with as much truth as we can share right now, as much as we know. That's where I was coming from. Okay. Barney.
I think it's important for us to honor the past, but to vision the future. And if we do that, I think there will be large benefits that will come to us as individuals and as a church as we move forward. And I think it's very important for us to think about what is necessary for us to move forward and not look backward. It's the kind of thing that probably is going to be very difficult for a number of people, but I still think it's our responsibility to help those who are unsure, perhaps, those who mourn what has happened, but to come together and to share in such a way that our moving forward will bring greater blessing to us as a church.
Thank you. Is there somebody else there? Lorianne?
Kirtland Temple's very special to me. I played Emma for a whole summer.
I met my husband there. I've been married for 40 years. I had my patriarchal blessing in the rose garden. Those are experiences personally to me. Nobody else knew that until I just shared that. I mean, that's something, we all have our own individual personal relationships and our experiences that we've had at these places. I've been to Nauvoo just as much. My question for the world church aspect of it is, was it so dire? Did they think they would have a different response if it had been brought up at a world conference, or if a decision had been made differently?
So part of that, and Kim can maybe help with this, part of their, I think it's in the frequently asked questions document, which I have a copy of if we want to read it more clearly. Okay, it's also posted on the bulletin board. They struggled with that idea of making it more open and the decision coming to a world conference. The problem was they knew that they would only have one buyer that could afford what needed to happen to come out of it. Through the negotiation process, if they knew that the church didn't want to do it, the church members didn't want to do it, the amount would be decreased or not happen at all, and the church would have gone through that 1/3. You know, we can't afford a 1/3 reduction in staff. They're already way low of what they were. I know I've gone through 2 layoffs with the church. I know what it's like. Anyway, yes, Jeff. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. And I'm visiting today, but I've been a member of the church since I was 23, and I'm 69, so I have a few years in it. Not that long ago, I visited with Joey Williams, and he had shared a testimony about a gentleman that came to our church, and we were the only church that had reached out to him. He had seen a billboard somewhere with our name on it and contacted us. But when I found out that they had sold the church, the properties, the first thing I thought of was, you know, Joey had said there are so many places that are wanting us to come, and we can't go because we don't have the funds. And to me, like Bill said, you know, looking toward the future, not holding on to things that really crumble and fall. I'm just happy that our church is moving forward, and hopefully the gospel will go to a lot more places.
Thank you. Jeff?
So for the last 10 or 12 years, I have served on a committee called the Mission Funding Council. And then just recently, I was asked to be on the World Church Investment Advisory Committee. So to answer your question, yeah, this has been a long time coming. When you look into the future, not just next year, but for decades to come, and you plan ahead, they could see that the trends were happening in such a way that, you know, it was not looking good, which that graph, you know, illustrates. But I can tell you this, the decision to sell those assets, I knew about 3 weeks ago from serving on those committees. And what I can tell you is that the Investment Advisory Committee oversees the 2 main funds that are managed by outside entities for us. And they range in return on an annual basis, anywhere between 4 to 10%, depending on how the market reacts to everything that makes the market go. And so quick math tells me that 5% of $192 million ought to generate about $9 million a year in returns on investing that money. And that's going to take care of about half your budget moving forward, as you can see how the expenses go. And that was the factor in the final decision to do that, was managing and investing that money in a way to help with the returns to sustain the budget.
Does that help, Lorianne? Okay. Is there anything else? And there's a more extensive answer in the frequently asked questions document. Anybody else? Any concerns that we haven't heard expressed? Debbie?
The World Church put on their Facebook, I don't know, it was a few days after the announcement was made, but it was in one word, let us know how you're feeling. And the first word I thought of was disappointed. And I think the reason why I feel that way is because I feel like a decision that this monumental should have been brought before the body of the church. It's not like we're children and we're just blindly letting someone else make a lot of decisions for us. I feel like that was an important enough decision that there at least should have been discussion like this, and there wasn't. And so I felt very disappointed about that. I felt very disappointed when the Book of Mormon was sold in that same manner. I mean, we're going to meet today about the HVAC system for the church. I don't think we would go ahead and make some great big decision about that without the body having voice and hearing. So I think that was not a very wise thing to do, and especially to help people that are struggling the most with it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the phone? No, okay. So we're pushing up against our 10 o'clock time for our business meeting. It won't be next week because I'm gone, but we'll try to get through the other videos in the next few weeks, maybe the 24th. Next week, Bob is going to lead a discussion from the lectionary scriptures, and that'll be in here too, while I'm gone to Portland for a funeral. So without objection, we'll close for today, and you can take a quick bathroom break if you need it, and Aaron's going to come up and Kurt and lead the meeting for the business meeting. Thank you so much for coming and sharing today.